And so there are lots of instances of teens who are making suicide attempts that are really impulsive, right? And so having that conversation with your teen around, like, if you start to feel this way, can we make a pact that you are going to check in with somebody and wait 24 hours?
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. You are listening to Don't Be Afraid to Talk podcast with James. I believe if we are going to affect change, we must go back to the basic, which for me, in essence, is conversations. Talking and listening is key for growth, and I hope our stories will bring us together and we can draw inspiration from each other. Conversation will include topics such as mental and physical health, trauma and its effect, suicidal thoughts, recovery, and well-being. We will continue to raise awareness and offer a different perspective, a mindset or an idea that could inspire you to take charge of your well-being and to grow as a human being. Thank you for joining us today. Today I'm joined by Kari, who's an author and an educator. Today we're going to be talking all things in relation to relationship with teenagers. If you're joining us today, have an open mind, and we hope you can learn something from this episode. Kari, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you very much for coming on. Do you mind just telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Kari O'Driscoll. I am first and foremost the mother of two young adults who are 19 and 22. We live in the United States. I raised my kids in the Seattle area. But I also my background is in adolescent brain and social development. And so I'm fascinated by teenagers. I love teenagers. They're my favorite people. And so I work with educators and parents and also teens to really help them understand what's happening inside the teenage brain and body, and where are we expecting things that they're not capable of yet? And where are we asking too much of them? And where are we not celebrating what's really just fabulous and unique about what's happening for teens?
Yeah. Oh, it sounds. And when you say your favorite people, from what age group?
I mean, so technically adolescence starts around the age of 10 and it lasts until we're about 22 or 23 years old. And so because of the kinds of things that are happening for people in that age, they tend to be my favorite people, all through that whole age range, because there's this sort of, like, they can legitimately have one foot in the world of childhood and the world of adulthood, right? Even up until you're 21, 22 years old, right? You can still be really irreverent and goofy and sort of get away with like eating hot Cheetos and watching reruns of SpongeBob. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, the freedom.
Yeah, but you also, their brains are like, you know, you could be doing that 1 minute, right? Your fingers are coated in that Cheeto dust and, you know, you're giggling from some ridiculous cartoon that you're watching, but then you can have this like brilliant insight and the people around you go, whoa, that's really wild, right? Like, they're so...
Yeah. It's like, how did you come up with that one?
Yeah. That's what I love about them, is there's this like dichotomy that is just amazing. And I think we can lose that as we get older, sadly.
Yes, we do. Yeah. So, today's conversations, questions and answers. So I have a couple of questions here for you. But before we get going, we're just going to play a quick game called 1 for 1.
Okay.
I'll give you a word and you say the first word that comes to your mind.
Okay.
So it's 5 different words. So, ready to go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is complete.
Sentence.
Revolution.
Circle.
Poetry.
Soothing.
Chicago.
Illinois.
My last one is beach.
Soothing.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's it.
That was hard.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, just 5 random words to get things going. So, yeah, I have good few questions here, so we see how many of them we can cover. My first question is, hi, Kari, how important is role modeling instead of telling teens what to do?
It's incredibly important. It's incredibly important. Teens are it's important for them to feel like they can start making their own choices and decisions and have practice doing that. And so when we tell them what to do, it actually lights up the portion of their brain that is associated with being punished, which is really interesting to know, right? Like they've done brain studies that show that when we give people unsolicited advice, when we tell them, here's what you should do, we use that word should, it actually lights up the part of our brain that is associated with punishment. And that's not what we don't want our kids to feel like they're being punished, right? When we're raising teens, it's important for us to give them safe parameters so that they can sort of bounce around and, make decisions and kind of experiment with things and learn in this safe environment. But they're watching us. They really are paying attention to the kinds of things that we're doing too, right? And so if we can model for them what it means to be human, what it means to have that whole range of human emotion, right? If you can be really transparent with a teen in your life and say, it's been a really rough day and I'm struggling to kind of regulate my nervous system right now, and normalize that for them. Or if we can role model apologies, right? If our teen comes to us and they say, I made this big, stupid mistake, and we completely overreact and fly off the handle and, get really angry. And then later we think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, right? Role model that apology for them, right? Go back and say, ooh, I wish I hadn't done that. I apologize. I imagine it was probably really scary and overwhelming for you. Is there a time where we could talk about this and maybe get a do-over, right? Modeling that sort of like, this is what it means to be human. I'm going to screw up too as an adult, right? And here's how we can fix it. Or here's, I don't know about you, but I was raised by those kind of parents that never apologized ever, even when they
no.
Because it was like a power thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. You always looked at them like they can't do it wrong, and they always looked at you as in you don't know anything.
Exactly. But the problem with that is when we parent kids with that really uneven power dynamic, what they learn is that in relationships, the person with the most power wins. And that's kind of a scary thing, because then when they go out into the world, they're seeking one of two things. They either want to be the person in power, or they want to find somebody who will have power and control over them and tell them how to live their life because that's what they're comfortable with, right? And the sad thing is you cannot be in an actual healthy reciprocal relationship with someone where there's a power imbalance. You can never feel 100% safe with someone who has power over you, because you never know if they're going to pull that power card and completely yank them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're never going to 100% trust them. So if we can, again, role model for our kids, like, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. Like, we're going to share power. We're going to have conversations. I'm going to hear what you have to say and really take it in. And then I'm going to ask you to do the same for me. That teaches them when they go out into the world. This is the kind of relationship that feels good. And this is what I should be seeking out when they go out into the world.
Definitely, yeah. That sounds like, as a parent or caregiver, you have to do the work to understand both, because when you come from a system that's dominated by power, for a better word, that's what you probably do yourself.
Right. It is. It's up to us as parents and educators and adults in the lives of teens that we care about to kind of unpack all that stuff and figure out, how can I be intentional in my relationship with this person? What am I actually teaching them? And it is work. It definitely, we have to kind of unhook from a lot of those lessons that we were raised with. But it's incredibly important, because if we want these teens to be able to go out in the world and really feel confident and know that they know what a healthy relationship looks like and actually want to come back and be in relationship with us, then that's the kind of work we have to do.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. My next question is, how important is feedback, positive or negative?
Feedback is really, really important. The thing about feedback is it requires consent, right? So again, that sort of unsolicited advice, I'm going to tell you, your kid comes off the soccer field and they've, their team's just lost the game, and you like instantly pull them aside and say, okay, here's what went wrong, right? That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good at all.
No, it doesn't.
So feedback requires consent. And I think it's important for us as adults, again, to get really used to saying to kids, are you open to hearing my thoughts? And to really be okay if the answer is no, right? Because here's what happens so the way the adolescent brain is, it's really ruled by emotion, and that's a physiological thing. The emotion center of the adolescent brain is actually physically swollen to 3 times its normal size during that 10 or 12 year period of adolescence. And so everything is filtered through the emotion center of the brain. And so if we say something or do something or have some sort of body language that sort of sets off that emotion for an adolescent, the physiological result of that is that the language processing center of the brain goes offline. And so as soon as our like fight, flight, freeze response kicks in, I'm feeling bad because we just lost this soccer game and now you're looking at me that way. And I know you're going to have something negative to say, right? Language processing portion of my brain is gone right now. So you could give me whatever feedback you want, and all I'm going to remember is I felt really bad. I didn't, So it's important for us to be able to say to kids, like, would you like to know what I saw? Would it be important to you? Or if there's later, like, I know you're disappointed about this right now, later feedback, come let me know.
Because, sorry.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, because we do that with adults. If, like, say, a friend of yours, before you give them a feedback, you might ask the question, can I tell you what I think? Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But the other important thing to know is, because of the way the adolescent brain is designed, right? Their emotion center is really highly fine-tuned, and the critical thinking portion of their brain is not yet fully developed. So when we give them feedback and it's welcomed, it's really important, because with a person, as a person who has a fully developed prefrontal cortex, who is able to have self-awareness and those critical thinking skills, if I give feedback in a way that feels positive, then what I'm actually doing is I'm helping that young person connect the dots. I'm giving them practice using that portion of their brain, right? So I'm saying, here's what I think. There's this thing that happened, and then here's where it went sideways. So next time, if this thing happens, let's brainstorm about how we could keep it from going sideways, right? And what we're actually doing is like opening up those portions of their brain and giving them practice at that critical thinking. And when we do that, it's like crawling before you walk, right? Like the more practice they get at that sort of executive functioning in their brain, the better. But it's not going to happen unless they consent to that, unless they agree.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're just talking to a wall. They're not hearing what you're saying. Yeah.
Exactly.
Definitely. Thank you. My next question is, can asking open-ended questions improve communication?
Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely can. I think the other thing that can be really helpful is humor too, right? Like catching them off guard instead of, an open-ended question of like, so what was school like today? Because they'll still find a way to give you a one-word answer. Fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Catch them off guard. Like wait till they get in the car on the way home and then say, what was the most ridiculous thing that happened at school today? Or what was the funniest? Was there anything at school that just made you belly laugh today? Right. Or, just like something where they have to like describe a scenario or give you, here's the situation. Right. You can even say like, what was the most annoying thing that happened today? Or was there anything unusual? Right. Because then they're going to be like, oh, this isn't this. Teenagers think that we're always checking up on them. Like,
yes, they do.
Some sort of ulterior motive, right? Like, are you really asking how much homework I have? Are you really asking if I'm going to, go home and goof off and play video games and not do my
Yeah.
Are you like, they're super suspicious, right? If we can ask them something that clearly has no agenda other than just creating conversation.
Curiosity, yeah.
Yeah. Then, and because everybody loves to talk about themselves. Everybody loves to talk about themselves, right? You just don't want to do something that can be used against you. And so if I ask you, what's the most ridiculous thing you saw today at school? That can't be used against me, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. That's cool.
And you can't give a one-word answer to that either.
You can't. You really can't.
Yeah. No, like that. Like they do think every question you ask is always like, what do you want to know that? I would be the same.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And with good reason, right? Because they're literally told pretty much all day, every day by everyone they encounter, here's what you don't know, or here's what you haven't mastered yet. Here's what you're not good at, right? I mean, their whole day at school is all about what you don't know, what you're not capable of, right? And then if you're doing sports or if you're in the school band or whatever, like everybody's always trying to teach you something, which has its place. But it also can really, think about that. If I went through my life all day long, every day with everybody that I encountered saying, I need to teach you this thing, that inherently means I'm not smart enough yet. Right?
Yeah.
Feels pretty.
I don't know.
I don't want that. I want somebody to say to me, holy cow, you're really good at that. That's pretty cool. Teach me how to do that.
Yeah, definitely. You can understand why when they get home, they don't want to do anything.
Well, for a whole host of reasons.
Yeah. Brilliant. My next question is, what can parents do with their teens sorry, let me start again. Let me have my drink. Sorry. Okay. What can a parent do when the teen's emotions running high?
The absolute very best thing we can do when our teens' emotions are really on overload is just acknowledge it, right? Just say, there's some big feelings happening right now. And then just give them that space, right? 9 times out of 10, that triggers this like onward rush of like, yes, I am, and here's why.
Yeah. Let me tell you what happened.
Yeah, exactly. And, and then, if that happens, if they do start to sort of launch into, here's what's happening, the other two really important things that we can do are, number one, just absolutely 100%. I'm the container for that emotion. I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to push back on it. I'm not going to make you justify it or defend it. I'm not going to try to say it's not that big a deal. Calm down. Don't ever, ever, ever tell a teenager who's really upset to calm down. This is the worst thing you can do, right? Just acknowledge it. And then the other thing that's super important is to ask them, what is it that I can do right now to support you? Maybe that's just venting. Like I used to say to my kids, whoa, stop. Tell me which hat I'm wearing. Am I giving you advice? Do you want my opinion? Or are you just venting? You tell me, you set the stage for this. And then I show up however you need me to show up. Right? Because most of the time, as they're venting, as they're going through that, they're activating that critical thinking part of their brain, right? And they're not only processing that emotion, but there's a part of them that's like talking through, here's what happened. And usually by the time they get to the end of it, they've determined either that's all I needed. I just needed to get that emotion out. And there's like, we don't have to do anything about it. Or figured out what to do about it just by talking through it, just by, and again, that's amazing, good practice for them, for that portion of their brain, right? That doesn't happen if they don't verbally process it, right? If they come home from school and they're in a crappy mood and they go straight up to their room and they just sit in there and ruminate, they're just in the emotion center of their brain, right? They haven't transferred it to this part where they're actually doing any critical thinking. So not judging and offering our kids space to just, I'm the container, you just go for it, right? Gives them an opportunity to really start to build some self-awareness and start connecting those dots for themselves. And occasionally, my kids would get to the end and be like, okay, I want your advice because this feels like a big deal. Or I don't want your advice, but you can give me your opinion. Like, you tell me, do you think I'm or not? And that's super important because it lets them own their own emotions and it helps them not get caught in that sort of loop of, I just feel crappy and I'm just going to keep feeling crappy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not going away.
It's really hard sometimes because, if it's a teenager that we really, really care about, it hurts us to see them struggling, right? And so it's really, really natural for us to want to be like, wait, it's not that big a deal. Calm down. Don't cry. Don't want, but that's really damaging, right? We need to allow them to just feel what they're feeling.
Yeah, because often, most of the time, what we try to do is fix the problem.
Yeah.
Or calm them down instead of getting them to process it.
Right.
Process what's happening.
Right.
Yeah. And sometime by processing it, they might get to the end and be like, oh, is that what it was?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm 50 years old and I do that. I get just enraged about something and I call a friend and talk to him about it. And then I get to the end and I go, yeah, okay, I'm good. Never mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If someone tells you to calm down, it's almost like, what do you mean calm down? I can't calm down.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like a judgment. I mean, again, I can't emphasize this enough for people who work with teens. It's a physiological thing that the emotion center of their brain is physically swollen to 3 times its normal size. They filter everything emotionally. They feel huge emotional swings. it's not because they're trying to be dramatic. It's literally physiology. Like, they have no choice. That's happening. Right? So trying to tell them to calm down, is like saying to someone with their hair on fire, oh, just go sit in the swimming pool, right? No, my hair is on fire. What are you, what? That doesn't make sense,
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, I think that's one thing we have to try to understand. Like you mentioned, it's not something they really have control over. So using words to try and describe it, it's just not going to help anyone.
Right. But they're building the ability to have control over it if they have a safe space to verbally process that stuff, right? Or for some kids, if you don't have a safe person, they'll journal or write poetry or do art, right? But there's some way of processing that stuff outside of our head is really important. And so, offering them a safe space to do that is building their ability. It's strengthening that muscle of being able to discern what is a big deal and what isn't, and how do I manage my emotions so that when that emotion center finally shrinks down to the regular size that it will be for the rest of their life, they've developed those sort of practices and those neural pathways that they can rely on to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. My next question is, how important is it to have an open conversation about mental health?
It's really important. It's even more important now in light of what's happened in the last 2 years. I think there is a lot of desire to sort of sweep all this under the rug, like, oh, phew, we dodged that bullet. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Normal, right?
Yeah, it's over now. Let's get on with life.
Right. And instead of like looking around and going, I mean, it's like having a tornado whip through your town, right? And destroy everything. And then you just go, okay, the tornado's gone. Let's just pick up and move to the next town and keep going.
Yeah.
But like, no, you got to go back and clean up that mess and like see, is there anything in there to salvage? And, and I think, that's another one of those things where the adults have to do a lot of hard work, right? Because we have to get comfortable having those conversations. We have to get comfortable not being afraid to say, I don't actually have the answer to that. Or, you know what? I feel really upset about that too. And I'm not quite sure what to do with it. Right. And that's another piece of that sort of role modeling for our kids, right? Is normalizing the fact that it's actually normal for all of us, each and every one of us on this planet right now, to feel pretty broken and paralyzed. Like, it would be really weird if we didn't. But the systems that we've built, the banking systems and the school systems and the systems of capitalism and all of these other things, they want us to, there's this like, the systems they want us to go back to normal. And there's this tension between like, I still have to pay my bills, right? I still have to graduate from high school and go to college. So there's this tension between all the things we have to do. And also the tornado wreckage behind us. Like, is anybody going to talk about that?
Yeah. It's like, it's behind us now. Forget it.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's incredibly important. And also, again, in light of the fact that, teens are experiencing everything through an emotional lens, and they don't often have safe outlets. The more we can have those kinds of conversations with them, the better, right? Maybe that's normalizing finding a therapist. Maybe that's saying to them, hey, you know what? I go to a therapist and it's helped me,
Yeah.
Or, but yes, absolutely, having those conversations is incredibly important. And especially when it comes to things like self-harm and suicide, which are even more difficult conversations to have, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing that we know about teens is that they are driven to take risks, right? And again, that's a physiological thing. They get 3 times the dopamine hit that the adult brain gets when they take a risk and it works out well. Like their reward system is like, woohoo!
Do that again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They get way bigger reward, which is why a lot of them that's why teens are more susceptible to addiction, right? Because their reward center is on overdrive. But what that means is that they tend to be impulsive, right? And so there are lots of instances of teens who are making suicide attempts that are really impulsive, right? And so having that conversation with your teen around, like, if you start to feel this way, can we make a pact that you are going to check in with somebody and wait 24 hours? Especially if there is a means that's available to them, if there are some pills, if there's a gun, or, at least can we sort of interrupt that impulsive notion and just, these are the 3 people you're going to text if you start to feel that way, so that we can at least interrupt that piece of it. And then we can sort of make a plan over the next 24 hours of what's going to happen. But a lot of times that's what happens with teens, and same with addiction. Young people who are in recovery from substance use struggle with that impulsivity as well. And so how do we interrupt that? Right. And so talking with teens really openly and honestly about, this is the way your brain is working. Your brain is telling you right now, I feel really horrible, and it's always going to be this way unless I do something drastic.
Yes. Right?
But what I'm here to tell you as an adult, with more life experience and a way more developed executive functioning brain, it's not always going to be that way. And even if you don't believe me, can you pretend that you believe me for 24 hours? And then we're going to figure that out, right? But the more we're able to sort of make a plan with young people around what happens if you start to feel like you really need to do something drastic, the better. But we can't do that unless we've created that trust already, where they're willing to come to us and talk about mental health. And that's the work we have to do as adults, is to get comfortable with those conversations.
Yeah, you can give them advice, but if they don't have that trust and for you, then should something come up, they're probably not going to think to come to you because they just don't have that trust.
Right.
Yeah. No, especially now, mental health, it's rampant. And I think the more we keep talking about it, because it's not a taboo subject anymore, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah. And I think the more that we really feel like, there's this, like, we have people, like, I've got people that I can reach out to. One of the things that I say to my friends and family that I used to say to my kids all the time is, help is a complete sentence. You can just raise the white flag, right? You don't have to be able to articulate what's wrong or tell me what you think the solution is. You can just say help, and I'll be there, right? And then we'll figure it out together, right? That's all it takes. Because I think a lot of times we feel like, I'm just feeling really horrible and I don't really understand why, and I can't even really explain it, but I just feel really horrible. And so we feel like I can't, like, what am I going to say? I'm going to call somebody up and I'm going to say, James,
I feel horrible.
I just feel horrible, right? Because I think you're going to ask is what's going on. And I'm going to be like, I'm an idiot. I don't really know, right? I just feel horrible, right? So cultivating that kind of a relationship of like, yep, help is a complete sentence. I got you. You say help. We'll figure it out together, or we won't figure it out. right? I'll just like climb down in the ditch and sit with you for a while until
yeah.
the ditch. Like that's okay too, you know? But
Yeah.
So helping our teens sort of cultivate those relationships, like who are my ditch people? who will come down in there with me, right? Because not everybody will, not everybody's comfortable with it.
No.
But who are those people? And then how do I get comfortable asking for help? Because that's the other thing that's really, and that's again back to your very first question about role modeling. That's huge. That's absolutely huge for us as adults to be able to say to kids, oh no, I got a tribe. I ask for help all the time. All the time. That's normal. That's a big deal. Yeah, it's a really big deal. Because the thing that none of us wants is to feel alone. We don't want to feel like we're the only one, you know, who feels this way.
That's going through it, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay. My next question, sorry. How can we encourage good teen social development without getting too involved or losing sight?
I think number one is we lead with curiosity, right? Giving these kids opportunities to tell us, like, what do you think is important? What are your passions? What would you want to spend your time doing? You know, what's your perspective on the world, right? Again, what that does is it engages this prefrontal cortex part of their brain, and it encourages them to start processing, like, what do I think about what's happening in the world? You know, the more opportunities we can give them to really practice those sort of executive functioning skills, the better. And when it comes to social stuff, those things are really, really hard, right? Because teens, again, a lot of us learn the person with the most power wins. And so being in those kinds of, there's all that jockeying for position and cliques and weird social dynamics that happen in school. And so leading with curiosity for our kids, like asking them, what kinds of friendships are, feeling really good to you? What do you do with those people? Maybe we just hang out. Maybe we just, maybe we do our homework together. Maybe we play video games together. But getting them thinking about what kinds of relationships actually make me feel good about myself, and what kinds of social scenarios am I in where I actually feel pretty rotten, and I don't, I'm not sure I want to engage with that kind of stuff, or how can I change the way that I engage with that? So getting our kids to really think about the social situations that they get in and the relationships that they're in. And that includes like romantic relationships too, right? What sort of, am I ready to have a romantic relationship, or is this going way too fast for me? What would feel good to me, and how do I articulate that to other people? How do I own that? Right? Because that's the other piece of it that's really scary, is like, I might know that I don't want to engage in this one particular activity that a bunch of my friends are engaging in. But I'm going to feel pressured to do it, right? And I'm going to feel like a weirdo if I say to them, I don't really enjoy that. I'm actually not super excited about that. So sort of practicing, being that sort of sounding board for our kids. Or, what do you think would happen if you said this? How do you think it would go over? And just giving them opportunities to kind of be curious about their relationships and the social situations that they get in, I think is really, really important. And again, sort of refraining from offering advice or our perspective.
Yeah.
They ask for it.
Yeah. Suppose if they're thinking that way themselves, they might think and be like, oh, I don't really like those people.
Right.
What do I mean?
Yeah. Or even, gosh, I never really thought about it before, but yeah, when I'm with this group of people, I actually don't feel good about myself.
Yeah.
big deal, right? Okay, maybe I need to pay attention to that.
Yeah, it's like when you're in a moment, you don't really think until you start asking yourself those questions. You might be like, oh, that person makes me feel bad. Why do I keep hanging around with them?
Right. Or how much
Yeah.
am I having to sort of contort myself to really fit in with these particular people? Am I pretending? Am I, changing the way I dress or the kind of language I'm using or whatever? And is that actually me? And if it is, then, how much farther am I willing to go? What other pieces of myself am I willing to shave off in order to sort of fit with this group? And is it worth it? What am I getting out of it?
Totally. Thank you. Can you still see me?
I can't. Well, you're frozen, but I can.
Yes.
It's fine. Am I frozen for you?
No, you're not frozen.
Okay.
Why am I frozen? Sorry, just give me a second. So I use my phone as the camera, and this has never happened before. Where is this? It's not like someone's ringing me because I put it on Do Not Disturb. So why is it?
Your phone is saying it's Friday night. We've done.
Yeah.
Done.
Why is it still loading? Oh my God. Yeah, sorry. It's just weird if you're talking to someone and you can't see them.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now I can see you moving.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why it just stopped. Okay.
Gotta love technology.
Yes, when it works, it's great. When it doesn't, you start stressing.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So my next question is, how valuable is listening to teens instead of Sorry, let me start again. How valuable is listening to teens instead of telling them what we think they should be doing, instead of listening to what they want to do?
It's one of the most valuable things we can do. Again, like I said before, I think, we don't often realize that our teens go through their entire day being shown in a myriad of different ways what they're not good at or what they're not capable of yet, right? And often as parents, like we have this sort of sense of urgency around like, I have to teach you to do all the adulting things before you go out into the world, right? There's this sort of, but here's what I tell parents. If that's not going to happen, there's no way. There are too many things. You're not going to teach your kid how to, clean their apartment and cook healthy meals and, drive and get a job. And, there's no way. There's too many things. You're not going to be able to teach them all the things, right? So if instead we can focus on cultivating relationship with them so that if they get out into the world and they don't know how to do something, they either have the confidence to sort of play around and figure it out on their own, or they trust us enough to know that they can call us and say, my oldest, when she went off to college and got her first apartment, she used to text me pictures of the food that she was cooking. And I would get like picture of, a chicken breast in a skillet, and it was sliced open, and she would say, is that still pink in the middle, or do you think it's done? Right. And I loved it. It was the greatest thing ever. Like it was awesome. I loved it. Yesterday, she FaceTimed me she lives in Chicago and I'm in Southern California. and she FaceTimed me, and she turned her camera. I said, hi. And she said, really quick, she turns her camera around and she shows me this street sign and she goes, can I park here? I was like,
I don't know.
I think so, but
Yeah.
she's like, I don't want to get a parking ticket. But so all of that is to say, right, set your expectation for yourself as a parent. There's absolutely no way you're going to be able to teach your kid all the things. But if you cultivate relationship with them, then they know they can come to you if they absolutely need to. And the way that we do that is by listening to them, is by giving them that space to like play with different ideas in their head or teach us something. That's the other thing that I will encourage parents of teens to do a lot is like ask your kids something that they know a ton about and you know nothing about. Let them be the expert and you just sit back and listen. Because they almost never get to be the expert unless they have like a younger sibling. But really, for the most part, they don't get to be the expert. And it could be something ridiculous. I mean, you know, like when my daughter was here over Christmas break, I said, I don't know how to I don't think I'm using TikTok right. Can you show me how to use TikTok? And she's laughing at me, you know, making fun of me the whole time, right? But it was great for her, right? It builds their confidence to believe that we actually do think that what they have to say is important. Like I do hear what you have to say. So yeah, listening to them is huge. And it can be really awkward in the beginning because they don't, again, they're suspicious. They're like, why are you asking me this?
Yeah.
So they can like be really give you these abbreviated answers. But once they start to trust over time that this is like, you do actually care, you do actually think they're interesting and you want to hear what they have to say. It builds that relationship and they will, you know, call you and ask you for advice or, you know, tell you some ridiculous thing they just saw. And it's really great. It's a really wonderful thing to, you know, have my kid. I hate having my kids not live with me, but I love it when they text me or call me or FaceTime me with some, you know,
something random.
Or, oh my God, you'll never believe what I did today. You know?
Yeah.
It's great. But it's a process. So, and it's a process that starts with us really actually paying attention and listening to them. And that's the other thing that I really will emphasize with parents is we have to actually be listening, right? It can't be one of these things where like, I'm on my laptop and I'm going, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay, right,
Yeah.
Got you, right? Or, you know, I'm cooking dinner and, you know, helping your younger sibling with their homework and you're telling me something really important and I'm going, yep, got it, right? Like, it can't be that. It has to be like, close the laptop, put the phone down, make eye contact, you have my undivided attention. I'm paying attention to you right now.
Totally.
We all know when somebody's not really paying attention to it.
Not there, yeah. Yeah. Like you're talking, they're just like, yeah. And halfway through, you're like, you're not even listening to me.
Right. No, I used to do that to like my parents. I'd be like, and then there was this giant pink elephant that flew in through the living room and it pooped on the couch. You know, and my mom would be like, dude, really? I know you're not listening to me.
Because that totally happened. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. You know, there are giant pink flying elephants.
Sorry. My next question is, what are some of the unconscious things that parents are doing that we shouldn't be doing?
I think one of the things that we do that's really harmful is that we get really frantic. Like we place so much emphasis on certain things that maybe really aren't quite that important, you know?
Yeah.
We can tend to, it's like everything has the same sort of weight and importance. And it's like all of it. Like, I need you to walk the dog. I need you to take the garbage out. I need you to get all your homework done. I need you to prep for your SAT class. I need you to, you know, all of those things. Like, I need you to do all the things instead of like stepping back and really thinking like, my kid needs some time to just chill and rest, right? They're working really hard. Yeah, I think we tend to sort of get our nervous systems all jacked up with all of the things that are on our to-do list. And then we carry that energy over into like, you have to do all the things, you know? And I think we could all benefit from really sort of taking a step back and going, is that really important right now? Or is it more important?
Yeah.
You know, to not do this. And, you know, it's really normal because there's this competitiveness that we have set up in our society around,
Oh, yes.
you know, your kid has to check all the boxes if they're going to get into a good college. And then the only way they're ever going to get a good job is if they get into a good college. And then, you know, the only way they're ever going to be able to retire is if they have a good job. And the only way they're going to be able to buy a home is, you know, and it's this like endless cycle of just, you know,
yeah,
you like can't get off the treadmill kind of thing. And so it's really common for us as parents to feel like we have to set our kids up to be the most successful they could possibly ever be. But what we're losing sight of is the way the human brain works and what it's supposed to be doing right now, which is really different from what we're asking of kids. You know, we're placing pressure,
totally, yeah.
all of this unnatural pressure on kids to think and act and learn in ways that are not conducive to thinking and acting and learning. And then we're expecting them to excel at it. So,
yeah.
And again, I think that's unconscious because there's this cultural thing around like, you have to do all the things. And if you know, I mean, like I can remember saying to my oldest daughter, like, if you don't get into college right after, you know, if you apply to all these colleges and you don't get into one, that's okay. Like you can apply again next year, or you can apply again when you're 27, or you can like, it's okay. It's really okay. Or if you go to college, she, you know, got into a university that she really wanted to go to. And then she had this sort of buyer's remorse thing. You know, she was about 3 weeks in and she was like, what if I made the wrong choice?
Yes.
The right school. And I was like, guess what? There's this thing called transferring.
Yeah.
You get halfway through the school year and you absolutely hate it there, you can go somewhere else. That's a thing. We can do that, right? But I think as parents, a lot of times we set these things up as like do or die. This is your one chance. And everything is equally as important. And these kids, they need time to play. They need time to rest. They need time to be silly and find that where's my foot in the world of childhood, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Suppose you see that a lot when they have like big exams coming up. Like there's so much pressure externally, sometimes even in the house as well, where it's almost like if you don't get this, like this is it for you, pretty much. And some things just fall apart. And later in life, you learn like it was never like that anyway.
Right. Nothing is like that. There's never been a job that I had where my boss said, if you don't get this report to me by 8:00 tomorrow morning and it's not absolutely perfect, you're fired. That's not a thing. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that way, right? You know, I mean, when I write a piece for a magazine or, you know, an anthology, there are always edits. Like there's always somebody who goes, I think you could say this maybe in a slightly different way, or is this what you meant to say? Right? We always get a do-over. We always get a do-over. So why are we pretending to our kids that everything is absolute life or death? Right? Because it's not. And also, if we do that with these kids and they forget how to play, I mean, that's such a tragedy. It's such a tragedy. You know, I want to be able to have my kids have a balance in their life of like, there's this work I'm doing and it's not always fun, but I'm pretty passionate about it. And I know how to play. I know what it means to take downtime. I know when my body's had enough. I know when someone is trying to pretend to me that this is, you know, do or die, life or death. And I can say, I don't think that's really true.
Yeah.
How do we help them discern that? Because I think we've set up these systems for kids where everything feels like it's high stakes, and it's not. It isn't.
Totally. Yeah. You know, even like just going back on exams over here, it's like the point system, and if say they need a certain amount of points to get into this, and the whole term leading up to the exam, they're just stressed. And then some people don't get those amount of points. The whole life just seems almost like falling apart. But like, there's more to life.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and you can always get back into it or try something else.
Right.
You know, we just kind of like, oh, if you fail this, that's it. Well, we don't use those words, but it comes across like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the message that we're sending, I think. Sadly. And I think it's way more important for us to be, you know, to help our kids understand, like, how do I discern which things are actually important and which things aren't? You know, I had this friend, so I had pretty severe postpartum depression after I had my second daughter. And my husband traveled internationally for work. And so he was gone a lot. So I was home with a 2-year-old and an infant a lot. And I was pretty depressed and I was really overwhelmed. And I remember my neighbor calling me one day to kind of check in. She's like, I haven't seen you in a couple of days. How are things going? I said, and I just burst into tears. And I said, I'm so overwhelmed. Like, my to-do list is so insanely long and I just don't even know where to begin. And I just want to climb back into bed and just hide. But
Yeah.
There's 2 small children to take care of. She said, I'll be right over. So an important thing to know about her is she was a retired school teacher. So she came over with her red pen that she used, you know, to mark up the students.
Yeah.
And she said, write down everything on your to-do list. And I looked at her and I said, I don't have time to. She said, yes, you do. I want you to brain dump. I want you to write down everything on your to-do list. And I'm like, you know, everything, absolutely everything that I had to do that whole day. And she grabs this piece of paper and she grabs her red pen and she goes, that's nonsense. You can ask somebody else to do that. That's complete BS. Like, she's just marking people.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? She looks at me and she goes, you don't have to pick up the dry cleaning. Your husband's going to be home in 2 days and the dry cleaner is on his way home from the airport. Guess what? He can pick it up. 90% of the stuff there's his clothes anyway. So that's not yours to do.
Yeah.
You're not picking up the dry cleaning. She goes, you don't have to empty the dishwasher. I'm like, what do you mean I don't have to empty the dishwasher? She goes, everything in the dishwasher is clean, right? I said, yeah. She goes, you and the kids are going to eat later today, aren't you? I said, yeah. She goes, take the clean dishes out of the dishwasher, put the food on them, eat it. Put the dishes in.
Yeah.
She goes, keep doing that. Keep using the clean dishes. And she's like, the whole place isn't going to fall apart if you don't empty the dishwasher today. I had built this stuff up in my head and I had made everything seem equally important, right? All of these things have to get done today. And she was like, no, actually, they don't.
No.
She wiped out like half of my to-do list. She's like, grocery store? I'm going to the grocery store later. Give me your list. I'll get your stuff. Bring it by. Drop it off on the front porch. Like, just completely did this reframe for me, right? Because the way that I grew up was you have to get all the things done. And if you have to sacrifice sleep or you need downtime for yourself, doesn't matter. Like, you're just going to have to figure out how to get more efficient at getting all those things done. But it's non-negotiable to get all those things done. And so I absolutely believed that, right? But it's not true. And we're killing ourselves thinking that it is true and trying to find ways to be more efficient. And the fact is, we don't have to do all the things.
No, totally not. It's only when you start looking back, you're like, oh, I don't need to do that. I'll sleep for an extra 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. So I'm going to ask 2 more questions here. So my next one is how important is it to encourage teens to be themselves?
It's
especially these days.
incredibly important. There are 2 important things that happen during adolescence. One of them is this brain development, right? The brain is like pruning off all the stuff that we sponged up as toddlers and elementary age kids and figuring out what's important and what isn't important, and then making itself more efficient. That's really important. Other vital thing that happens during adolescence is identity development.
Yes.
We figure out who we are. And that can be everything. That can be gender identity. It can be sexuality. It can be ethnic, racial identity. It can, there's all these different components to our identity, right? And adolescents will try things on. They'll try different things on naturally. That's so normal for them to just kind of play around and sort of bump up against like what feels right and what doesn't, what seems socially acceptable and what doesn't, like how do I play with all these different things? And then we all have these different ways of interpreting the world and sort of communicating and, figuring out, making meaning of the world, right? Some of us are super auditory, right? So some people can listen to an audiobook and absorb all of that information and, that all makes sense to them. I am not one of those people. It goes in one ear and out the other, right? I'm super visual. So I have to read the book. If I go to a party and there's a bunch of people there, if people don't have name tags on, I'm in big trouble. Like I won't remember anybody's name unless I see it in writing. And other people are what's known as kinesthetic or tactile, right? They experience through the world through touching and building and manipulating things. And we all have some mix of those different things. But some people tend to have a really highly dominant area of one of those things. And so like for my youngest daughter is highly, highly kinesthetic. And what that meant was that school was absolute torture for her, right? Forcing her to sit still at a desk and keep her body still and process auditory information that a teacher was talking about and then giving her something to read while she was still supposed to keep her body still was absolute brutal torture for her because she was using every ounce of energy she had to like keep her body still. And she wasn't able to focus her brain on what was actually happening, right? And so when kids can start to recognize, like, these are my strengths. These are the things that feel really natural to me. These are the things I'm super passionate about. These are the things I really struggle with, right? And they can start to put those puzzle pieces together. That forms the foundation of their identity. Like, who am I? So my youngest daughter is a musician because that's, she can walk and play guitar and she can, manipulate the mixing board to do all these different things. Like, she's an amazing musician. She was never going to be somebody who was going to like go to law school and then sit and write briefs and read things.
Yeah.
Right. That's torture for her. But so all of those things, all of those ways where we can encourage kids to just sort of play with those different things and figure out, like, try that on. Does that feel okay? Does it seem right? Maybe not. Do that. This is the time of our lives when we're supposed to be doing that. Literally what we're supposed to be doing when we're adolescents is forming our identity. And so the more freedom we can give kids to explore and experiment and be themselves, the better. Absolutely.
Yeah, because the way majority system is set up, that everyone should be able to learn and process information in the same way as everyone in a class, and that's totally not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally
It's
not the case.
definitely not. And it can be really damaging for some kids, right? I mean, I was lucky enough to be able to find alternative schooling for my youngest daughter so that she didn't get to that point where she felt like she was just stupid and incapable, you know? She was able to find other ways to, and then she was really good at advocating for herself too. Like she, could her teachers in high school and say, if I'm not making eye contact with you and I'm doodling while you're lecturing, that's actually me paying attention. That's what it looks like when I'm paying attention. If I'm sitting ramrod straight in my chair, hands in my lap, staring at you, I'm not processing a word you're saying.
Yeah.
So
my mind is somewhere else.
Right. I'm sorry if you see me, doing this or bouncing my leg up and down or, rocking back and forth in my chair. But that's what it looks like for me to be paying attention. Right. And so for our kids to be able to develop that sort of self-awareness around who am I and how do I feel most comfortable moving through the world, that gives them permission to then be able to advocate for themselves. So like she said to me when she graduated from high school, I'm not going to college, right? Like there's no way. I've done 12 years of your formal education nonsense and I'm not doing any more of it. Okay, right? She would have been miserable. So let's figure out what your next plan is. But that comes out of helping them be comfortable, really figuring out who they are as individual people.
Definitely. Yeah, identity is a big thing. 'Cause if you don't know what works for you, you're just going to, like that, you probably think you're stupid because you just haven't figured out what's easier for you. So that's where the self-hate comes in and all sorts. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. I have one more question. It's probably a long one. So what are some of the tips you can give parents to enhance their relationships?
Number one is catching them doing things that are good, right? Again, they're constantly being told what they're not good at or what they, where they screwed up or where they could do better. And so like being really honest about like, I just saw that, when you went and helped your little brother figure out his math, that was really awesome. Thank you. You're a good big brother. Those kinds of things. Or, saying my oldest daughter really struggles with anxiety. And when she went away to college, she went really far away and she was really scared, but she just kept doing it. Right. And so I would send her a text message every couple of days and just say, I see you. I know how scary and how hard this is for you. And I just want you to know that it's really amazing to see that you're sticking with this and that you're determined to like make this happen in spite of the anxiety that you're feeling. Right. So just those like little messages of encouragement of, hey, you did way better on your math test this time than you did last time. How does that feel? So catching them doing something right, even if it's just something tiny, thank you so much.
Yeah.
The mail today or whatever. Number two is, again, what I said earlier, like ask them to teach you something. What can you teach me? What are you an expert at that I am no good at? Right. That's a big dang deal, right? Because there's already this power differential, right? They already keenly feel like we're the experts in everything and they know nothing. So turn the tables a little bit is awesome. The third thing is play. We did this thing where one of my kids would come to me once a month with some recipe they found on TikTok. And they would say, all right, here's all the ingredients. We're going to follow this and just do it. Right. Okay, cool. Whatever. And let them be the driver of that. We would do this other thing where we moved when my daughters were in high school to same town, but we moved to a new neighborhood. And I was like, okay, once a month, we're going to find a new restaurant, and like, we're just going to explore our new neighborhood, right? So everybody gets a turn. So this month it's your turn, and it doesn't matter if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, like whatever. The only rule is that it has to be within walking distance, which fortunately we lived in Seattle. So there were tons of places within walking distance. And number two, none of us has ever been there before. And so we're just going to explore. We're going to do it all together, So find ways, it can be a puzzle. It can be video games. My kids used to love to play video games with me because I'm horrible at them. It's hilarious that, I was like, even Mario Kart, like I get so panicky and freaked out and like, I don't know what I'm doing. There's too many buttons. So play with your kids. No agenda, not like, we're going to go out and work on your soccer skills so you can get a scholarship. But like, we're just going to play. We're just going to goof off, go, paint or, whatever, and let them sort of be the driver of that. Because what we want them to understand, and this is true for any relationship, right? You want to be in relationship with people that you feel like want to spend time with you. Right?
Totally. Yeah.
It's not all about like these teachable moments or helping you process difficult emotions, right? Those things are important, but that's not a well-rounded reciprocal relationship, right? I want to be in a relationship with somebody who's willing to let me cry on their shoulder and also who's going to call me and be like, oh my God, I just found out there's this awesome concert happening on Friday. Do you want to go? Right? So just find opportunities to hang out with them. And then, be curious about them. Be genuinely curious about them. What's the elective that you chose to take this year? Why was it this class over that class? What was compelling about that? We need to know them as human beings. And that can be tricky because as parents, we think we already know these people, right? I already know you. I've known you your whole life, right?
Yes, parents do think that.
Yeah, but we don't, right? We don't, because again, they're experimenting with identity. They don't even know themselves. So, cool. Let's figure that out together. Teach me who you are as a person. Those things are huge. And then just relax a little bit. I mean, I know it's so hard to say, right? Because we all have so many stresses and pressures on us. But and it goes back to that kind of to-do list thing. Like, what's actually non-negotiable? And where can we have some wiggle room? Where can we give each other some grace? Where can we just say, you know what? We actually don't need to do that. That's actually not, cross that off your list. So, yeah. Those would be my big tips.
Big tips, yeah. No, they're great. No, they're great, especially the one around, like, say, just having fun with kids. Even getting them to teach you things. We, as parents, you think you know everything. Well, to them, you know everything. So, and to give them the opportunity to show you something new, it's great, because like that they'll feel great about themselves, and they're showing you what to do for a change instead of just you. Yeah, and that's how you build a closer relationship with them as well.
And you can learn things about your kids that just astonish you, right? You can be like, I didn't know you knew how to do that. Are you kidding?
Yeah,
you learn how to do that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, totally. Just need to get out of the mind of you're the parent and they're the child. You just look at them as a human being.
Yeah. I mean, I think, as our kids get older, that's the tricky part, right? Is that sort of like, it needs to be an evolving relationship. It needs to be sort of developmental. Like it's not just parent-child until the day that this kid, leaves to go get their first apartment on their own, right?
Yeah.
We're not just like pushing them off a cliff and being like, okay, it's not the, baby bird going out of the nest. You're ready now. See ya. I probably will never see you again, right? Like it needs to be this as they get more capable of making decisions, making good decisions. Like we're there pulling back and we're making fewer decisions, right? And we're know each other more on a human level and not this sort of hierarchy of who has power and who doesn't. And it's really hard because that's culturally not something most of us were taught. You know, most of us were taught like, it's my house, my rules until the day you're on your own, you're paying your own.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you know, it worked. I mean, I'm here, right? I'm functioning, but I didn't have a loving, caring, warm relationship with my parents as an adult because it didn't feel like we'd set that up in the beginning. And there were a lot of things, I think, that I ended up having to learn on my own emotionally and socially that I wouldn't have had to learn on my own if I'd had a different kind of relationship with my parents.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you. It was really
thank you.
You.
A lot of takeaway there. And so, yeah, my other question is not related to this. What do you do yourself for fun?
Well, I live in Southern California. I moved to Southern California not quite a year ago. And I have two little rescue dogs. And my dogs and I go to the beach a lot for fun. I live about 5 blocks from the beach. And so going to the beach is absolutely one of my favorite things to do. Cooking. I love cooking, trying out new recipes. I never follow them, but I want it as a guide, and then I will mess with it. Just sort of, I don't think we need that. What if we add?
Yeah.
So that, I find that a really creative thing. And then my youngest daughter lives about 90 minutes drive from me. And so every 2 weeks or so, she and I will get together and find just some bizarre flea market, or we found this really crazy, weird museum of like Valley Girl things that we went and visited a couple of weeks ago. So we'll find some, weird place to go explore, and I'll drive down there.
Yeah.
And we'll spend a day together just goofing off, or we found this expensive boutique in Venice Beach, and we went and tried on like these insanely, ridiculously expensive clothes and took pictures of each other.
Yeah.
And laughed because there's no way we'd ever be able to afford them.
Yeah.
So.
It's like, I'll try this, and they'll be like, no, I don't want it. I'll go home and think about it.
She said, so she's a musician, and she did say to them, if you let me wear this in my next music video, then I'll, put it all over Instagram about your.
Yeah.
We'll think about that.
We'll find you.
So yeah, spending time with my kids I love spending time with my kids. I find that a lot of fun.
Super. Get my mind and body in the right place.
Fair enough.
And I just get so anxious. Thank you for joining us today. Oh, God. Sorry.
No apologies. No worries. It's all good.
If you enjoyed today's episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a quick review on my Facebook page, Don't Be Afraid to Talk, or DM me on Instagram. The show notes will include all of the relevant links from today's episode. If you haven't already, please download, leave a rating, and share with your friends. You might just reach that person who needs to hear this message. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. I am James Lumumba, signing off with gratitude.